But yeah, what's funny is, my most successful video of really since my very first Baldur's Gate 3 video, which
Hmm.
is the only one that I have still to date that's like done over 1 million views, right?
Yeah.
Um, but besides that, my most successful video to date, I believe, is the one that I put out last summer that just goes over all of the changes to every subclass, right, for the 2024 rules
Yeah.
compared to 2014. And it's 4 hours long.
That's a beast of a
And
video.
and I can't help but think that the main reason it's doing so well or has done so well is because, like I was just saying, I think a, the vast majority of people who watch my videos just use me to go to sleep, right? And so if that theory is true, well, like a 1 hour video is kind of obnoxious
Mm.
because you might be just about to fall asleep and then the
Yep.
video ends and then you get like this annoying like outro music and then the commercial and you have to. But on a 4 hour video,
Hmm.
like that'll get you halfway through the night,
Yeah.
right? Like you can just put that thing on
That's a
and
nap.
just
That's a
you don't
daytime
have to
nap. That's like a
worry.
solid
Yeah, you don't have
rest.
to.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about getting interrupted. So yeah, that one's got a lot of playtime, and I think it's great for people who are looking for some good D&D ASMR.
Which is a niche.
Yeah,
Entirely held up by you, I think. There probably are other ones.
I think you could include some of the Bob World Builder's got to
Mm.
be some people have got to he's got a very soothing, calming voice and
Hmm.
demeanor. There's probably others.
Dardy from Mystic Arts has a very low
Yeah,
timbre to his voice as well. That's solid. Yeah.
there you
Makes me
go.
wonder if I should lower my voice when I'm doing interviews and stuff.
Yeah, you could try
It wouldn't
it,
be very
or
convincing,
just
but
or just go just go in post and just fiddle with it, right?
just tweak it all down.
Yeah,
Are you
just
moving
just bring
slower than
that down.
usual? Like, yeah, I slowed the whole video down by 50%.
Right, there you go.
Uh, this is Heroic Inspiration, my TTRPG chat show, where I talk to lovely guests. And with me today is none other than the man behind a shocking number of DM panicking builds and the master of the multi-class, Colby from D4. Hello.
How's it going, Jason?
I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, no, of
And yeah,
course.
I think to be fair, in my defense, maybe, I think a lot of my half of my viewers watch me to sleep, to go to
Hmm.
sleep, and the other half are just forever DMs who use my builds for their BBEG
That's a
in their
solid
campaign.
shout. I should do that.
And yeah, and when they tell me about that, I'm just like, oh, sorry, like apologize to your players for me, please.
Mm.
Although, that said, the reality is a lot of my builds as I present them tend to be very glass cannon
Mm.
like, where they'll maybe do a ton of damage but they have some glaring weaknesses
Yeah.
like a horrible wisdom save or things like that. And so a smart group of players could fairly easily take them out with just a well placed hypnotic pattern or
Yep.
or hold person or something like that.
Or a
So
trip attack to the dex builds or
yeah, there
anything
you go,
else.
there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
It's a good system. It's a good system. Do you play like that when you play D&D?
Excuse me. So, yes and no, I would say. Oftentimes, and people actually complain about this a little bit in my comments frequently because a lot of times I'll do a build and I'll say, okay, look, like I'm interested in exploring sort of what's possible from a damage perspective if I'm building like a damage focused character, or like a survivability perspective if I'm building kind of a tanky character or whatever, right? And I like crunch numbers and I stick it in the spreadsheet.
Hmm.
And oftentimes I will say things as I'm going along that's like, okay, look, if we truly wanted to like eke out as much damage as possible, then like this is the choice that we would make here. You'd want to
Hmm.
take this fighting style or that feat or whatever. Um, if it were me playing this character in game, like I might I'd probably go with a different choice here because the little bit of damage that we're getting isn't really worth it.
Mm.
Or if it's a tank, we have enough survivability. Like we don't need more, right? We
Nothing
want
can
to
kill us.
be better at other things.
Yeah.
But in the interest of science, right, and just to kind of explore the limits of what's possible,
Mm.
let's take the survivability option or the damage option or whatever. Um, so yeah, so when I do play in game, I definitely always have like had an eye towards optimization or min maxing or whatever you want to call it. Um, but uh, there are times where I'll scale it back a little bit, right? Like, okay, fine, I'll take the Warcaster feat here, even though I hate it and it doesn't increase my damage, but I know that I need to hold on to my concentration, so I'm
Yeah.
just going to take it or whatever, right? um, and things like that. I'll make slight adjustments. I'll pull back a little bit, but generally they do still tend to be fairly glass cannony. That my characters that I play in a campaign, just because I don't know. I like that high risk, high reward
Mm.
play style. It's fun to me to have weaknesses in my
Yeah.
characters, right? And that's fine. Like as long as I'm not playing with a DM who's sort of like purposefully and intentionally trying to exploit that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy as much playing D&D where the DM is sort of thinking about the game as like a tactics game that
Yeah.
they're playing against me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And not to say that like that's not a valid way to play if that's what you enjoy and that's what everyone else at
Yeah.
your table enjoys. Awesome, and I know that a lot of my viewers do. um, they're optimizers and so are all their friends and so is their DM or
Yeah.
whatever. And they really kind of get into like the nitty gritty and the weeds, when they're in combat. I tend to prefer, yeah, like a DM who is more interested not just in like collaborative storytelling, but when it comes to combat, um, treating it almost like, okay, like I want, oh gosh, XP to 3
Mm.
had a fantastic video on this months ago, and it was something like DM to the way that your players want to play or something like I can't
Mm.
remember, but like he did this little skit like he does, right? If you've seen any of his
Yeah.
videos, and he's playing both the DM and every single one of the players.
Yeah.
He just puts a hat on for like the guy or whatever. Anyways, he's kind of got this table of players, and all of them very obviously like enjoy a different aspect
Mm.
of D&D, right? Where like one guy is the min max optimizer and just wants to like do the most damage or whatever. The other person is kind of really looking to kind of do something unique and fun and disruptive, like in the battlefield. And somebody else is, I don't know, whatever, really into like their character concept and trying to find a way to like be effective in combat, but
Mm.
still like be super true to whatever kind of weird character thing that they've got
Mm.
going on anyways, or maybe like try and be persuasive or use their skills to be kind of effective in combat. And you see this DM like kind of like finding a way to let all of them kind of do what they want
Yeah.
and what feels fun to them and what feels powerful for their character, right? And that's the kind of table that I play at. Like I'm
Mm.
the only one who kind of optimizes their character at my table, and everybody else kind of likes doing other things in combat. And so I think in those scenarios, especially the best DMs, yeah, I tend to be the ones that's like, I'm not saying just like let me one shot everything,
Yeah.
right? And never exploit whatever weaknesses my character might have. Do that. It keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
It keeps it interesting. It keeps it
Yeah.
challenging, but don't do it every single
Yeah.
combat encounter. Like, you know what I mean? Like throw a wrench in the works, make me, maybe think on my feet or try a different tactic, once in a while, but also like understanding, hey, I've built this character to do this sort of specific
Mm.
thing, and it can be really effective and powerful in combat. Like let me do that
Yeah.
because that's super fun for me. And as long as it's not, ruining the fun for other people at the table, obviously, which is important, then yeah, like let your players like do what they mostly want to be doing with their characters, as opposed to finding ways to defeat them all the time.
Yeah. 100%.
I don't
I
know.
I find that as a DM, I tend to shore up different things with magic items. So I'm running a game at the
Mm,
moment with one player who's a rogue whose charisma stat is nearly their highest stat. He's not playing a
Mm.
swashbuckler. He's playing a
Wow.
phantom rogue because he wanted
Okay.
the roleplay stuff, and that's absolutely great.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to give you a stronger weapon than I'm giving everyone else to make sure that your numbers are keeping up, because otherwise you'll feel like dissatisfied with it.
Sure.
Uh, and I like to run
Do
lethal
you?
encounters too. So
Yeah. So he's got to have something, right?
yeah.
Do you find, because I'm curious, sometimes I see that in a game, and there's a part of me and or I see another player sometimes like a little bit of a, oh, like that's not fair. Like, how come I don't get a
Yeah.
magic weapon that's like that good? Do you ever feel like you get pushback from your other players in those scenarios? When when you kind of try and level the playing field
Mm.
a little bit, as it were?
So there was like a feel, there was definitely a moment of it, and then I explained why I was doing it. I was just very honest. I was
Mm,
like, look, you guys are super good at min-maxing your characters and what they're doing.
mm.
This character has taken a very more role play heavy like focus. I still
Build,
gave them
yeah,
magic items, but their magic items were more for like extra utility rather than extra damage,
sure.
as a way of shoring things up and keeping it interesting. So everyone's still got cool items. It's just where
Yeah,
those items go, basically.
right. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think as long as it's not, throwing the balance too far
Mm.
in maybe that other character's
Yeah.
favor. I was playing in a campaign once, and we kind of had a situation like that where there was one character who, was very sort of one player, I should say, who was who had a very like anti-optimizer, anti-min-maxer to the point where you see this a lot of times, right? Min-maxers, optimizers can be obnoxious in that sometimes we can come across as or just be blatantly telling people you're doing it wrong.
Wrong. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like this is the right way to do it, if and that can be obnoxious. On the other hand, I think you see the flip side of that sometimes too, where people are like, you're ruining the game.
Mm.
You're just trying to make it all about the numbers.
Yeah.
You suck at role play, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And so this guy was a little bit in that camp, sort of almost chip on his shoulder about like, I'm going to intentionally, pick the unoptimal
Mm.
choice here because like, that, but whatever. But then he would complain and be frustrated when in combat his character felt very
Yeah.
ineffective. And so our DM like gave him these homebrewed magic items that were just like basically he had a pet like siege tank. It was some like mecha because he was an artificer.
Mm.
It was some like clockwork like boulette that could like go into siege mode and essentially launch fireballs at people and stuff, and we were all just kind of like,
That's a bit
okay,
much.
well, I guess we'll just stand behind the siege tank in combat encounters from now on and just let them blow everything up. You know what I mean? So you can definitely go too far
Yeah.
in that direction, I think.
It
Anyways,
has to be balanced,
yeah.
which is tough as a DM, obviously. But
Oh yeah.
you've decided to DM, and you can always balance things later. I think one thing that a lot of newer DMs worry about is, oh, I've overdone it. What do I do? And it's like, you just say that you've overdone it, and then you tweak it.
Yeah.
You're the
Yeah.
game engine.
It's
You're
like,
allowed to do that. Like, that's the point
yeah,
of it.
we're all just human, and you're the DM, and you can,
Yep.
you know, make changes as you see fit.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, for sure.
What is your favorite aspect of D&D? Is it the build crafting, theory crafting?
That is a hard question to answer. I think I think most people who watch my channel would think that I must be like a murder hobo, and I just like live for the combat, right? And
Yeah.
just doing damage and killing everything. And to be fair, I am a little bit of a murder hobo, and I do really like the combat. But I think that probably takes a second or maybe even third place seat for me to yes, like just the character creation
Mm.
aspect. I really do enjoy that a lot. The theory crafting is almost as much fun to me as playing the game. I say that in the intro to all of my videos, and it's true. It's not quite, but it's close. Um, but really, it is the like the storytelling and the role play. Like all of the best moments in D&D that I've experienced were all always like when there was this cool, poignant like conversation between characters or character and NPC,
Mhm.
or some like surprise resolution to a conflict that we weren't anticipating. um, those were always the most memorable and impactful and fun moments where it felt like this is so much more than just a game, even like a video game, you know what I mean? Where we're just
Yeah,
like killing monsters, right? It's actual like creation and storytelling in a way that is so hard to replicate outside of TTRPGs.
yeah,
Um, to be fair, a lot of the times, some of those favorite moments in game sort of were also during combat, right? Like some really cool thing happened in
yeah,
combat that had like an impact. Well, it wasn't just like, remember that one time when I like killed that dragonborn
yeah,
guy with one hit? That was cool. But like those aren't my favorite moments in the
yeah,
game, right? It's when something awesome happens in combat and or in or outside of combat, right? But if it's in combat, it's something unexpected. Somebody got some lucky crit,
mm,
or somebody counterspelled this key spell that you could tell the DM wasn't anticipating,
yeah,
and suddenly they had to like think on their feet
yeah,
and like change their plans and even like rewrite their whole story because now we actually took out the big bad
yeah.
like early on when we weren't supposed to, and now how's that going to affect like all that kind of stuff. I live for. Yeah.
The one of the best moments I've had in one of my campaigns recently was in a pirate themed campaign. I threw a rock at the players because not a rock, a rock, um, bird,
Got it.
not stone, at the players because I was like, "Oh, roll a dice for me to see if you encounter anything." And the player rolled a one, and I was like, "Oh, oh no!" So threw this rock at them. It was looking rough for them. One of them was
Mm.
down. Two of them were nearly down. One of the players cast Fog Cloud so that the player that was down would have a chance to survive. The player that was down rolled a nat 20, got back up, used a spell to give disadvantage to the rock. Then the monk stunned it because it failed its
Mm.
saving throw, and then the last player crit it. And it was all like three nat 20s basically in a row. It was just like
Nice.
beautiful.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's,
Oh,
yeah, that's the good stuff.
it's great when the dice tell when you let the dice tell the story a
Mm,
little bit, right? And whether for success or failure,
yeah,
right? Because it can go both ways, and those failures oftentimes are just as, if not more, memorable, I think, and interesting and even fun
mm,
if in a storytelling way, not
yeah,
necessarily in a I like to be a powerful hero kind
yeah,
of way, right? But yeah, like when your characters have flaws, when they fail, it feels like you're playing a real character and not
yeah.
just some, I don't know, kind of video gamey superhero, right?
And that's the point of like you said. I think we talked about this last time as well. That like the thing that separates TTRPGs from games as standard is you get to play a living, breathing character and embody them, and
Right,
that's so much fun because you can't do that
right,
with video games, even with a video game
right.
as great as Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, yeah. As great as Baldur's Gate is, and even though there are lots of potential branching
Mm,
paths that you can take in dialogue and
yeah,
in how you handle situations and what that might result in, different outcome, etc. It's still scripted, right?
yeah,
And there's only so many branching paths that you can potentially take, and in the end, like replayability wise, you're still basically going through the same
yeah,
story. Like you can take different paths. Oh wow, like if I say this to that character, it changes things a little bit, but in the end, like there's still an elder brain that you're
yeah,
trying to kill. You're trying to stop the mind flayers. You're trying to stop yourself from becoming one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Meeting largely the same characters
yeah,
and things. And so, yeah, it is a fantastic game, and it's a fun sandbox
Yes.
to play with like different builds and
Yes.
different items and equipment and how they affect, different ways that you can build characters and all of that. But yeah, ultimately, it's much less interesting than a TTRPG, a good TTRPG for sure.
Yeah. When you play Baldur's Gate, do you play co-op or single player?
I would love to play co-op.
Mm.
My very first run was an attempt to just do a co-op
Yeah.
playthrough, but I have kids
Mm-hmm.
and my friends have kids,
Mm-hmm.
and we're all married and we all have full-time jobs,
Yep.
and it's just like, well, I could play, Tuesdays at 9, or Fridays from like 5 to 7,
Mm.
and it's like, oh, I can't because I could only play it, at this time. And it's just like we got together and actually sat down and played 2, maybe 3 times, and
Mm.
it was a lot of fun. And we were actually even kind of role playing our
Mm.
characters a little bit. So we're on voice chat, and I was full on like pretending to be my Tav, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I had a backstory in mind for him, and I was speaking in a voice, and the whole 9 yards. And it was a lot of fun. And ultimately, like, it's just so hard to get schedules together. And then not only that, but like, it's like we played on a Tuesday night or whatever, and then on Wednesday we couldn't play. And I'm like, well, gosh, like I really want to play Baldur's Gate,
Yeah.
but I can't just. So like, I guess I'll just start a solo
Yeah.
character and I'll start playing that. And then the next day I played that solo character
Yeah.
again. And then on the next day it was like, okay, I think everybody can play for a couple hours. Should we sit down? And I'm like, I'm already like at the end of Act 1, and I want to see what happens next.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back and like, go through the, goblin
Yeah.
camp again or whatever. Um, so yeah, I really would like to try doing that if I could just find a group of friends where we all had the same schedule.
Yeah.
And it's tough because for me, I usually don't really play until later at night.
Mm-hmm.
I wait until my wife is in bed.
Right.
Um, and that doesn't happen until 11 p.m. And so it's like, it's fine for me because I can go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 8.
Yeah.
I've got a fairly flexible schedule, right? Most of my friends can't do that. And, I have other friends, like I've talked to Kelly and Monty, right? The
Mm.
Dungeon Dudes, and like, hey, let's do like a co-op Baldur's Gate game. And they're like, yeah, that would be awesome. I'm like, okay, great. Can you guys start playing at like 1 a.m. Eastern time? Because that's when I can get on. It's like, no. So it's like, okay, never mind.
It was worth a shot.
So yeah, it just doesn't work very well.
What you need to do is send your fans to the Dungeon Dudes and tell them that that's what the people want.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's content, you guys. It's content.
It's good content. The people
Yeah.
love the extra Dungeon Dude.
The D or D6
Or
as people
D6.
call it.
Yeah.
D&D deep dive Dungeon Dudes. So
And the wonderful bromance that you three have is incredibly endearing, I think.
they're legitimately like the coolest guys. I know that most people just know us and see us through our videos, right, and
Yeah.
interacting, but like they are exactly as like kind and lovely as in person as you would anticipate. Maybe more so even. And they're just fun to hang out with. Like I love, like I go to Canada anytime I get an excuse. To be able to like hang out with them. And yeah, when we see each other at the cons and stuff, I'm always just like, can I just be like in your entourage? I just want to hang out with you guys. Like I don't, walking the floor, that's great. Going to the breakouts and the panels and stuff, cool. Mostly I just want to hang out with Kelly and Monty. And other people too, as I'm becoming more and better friends with others like Will from D&D Shorts, and I'm starting to get to know like Antonio and Jenny and stuff a little better, and others. They're all awesome, wonderful people.
It's a good community
yeah,
of creators for sure.
it really is. It really is.
I've interviewed many of them. Collecting them on my playlist.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Are there any subclasses in D&D that don't exist that you think would be cool?
I see a lot of people talk about like previous versions, previous editions of
Hmm.
D&D, and how they need to bring those in. I think the Warden is
Hmm.
one, if I'm not mistaken, from 4E. There are others. If I'm being honest, like I don't feel like there's a huge gap
Hmm.
there, and the reason I think is because 5E is so liberal with its multiclassing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, and I talk about this on my channel, it seems like a lot, and maybe especially recently. A lot of times you'll have DMs who are like, they either won't allow multiclassing
Mm.
or they'll be like, okay, you can multiclass, but it has to like make sense
Yeah.
and you have to like have a good reason for it, right? And so like you can't just be a paladin warlock.
Yeah.
Like you can't be like a whatever, a devotion paladin fiend warlock because those two would just never go together. Or you can't whatever, insert your whatever classes that feel like a dichotomy or an
Yeah.
opposition to you. um and I tend to maybe have a little bit more of a view of like, look, like, don't think of my character as a paladin warlock. They are a I don't know, they're a death knight,
Yeah.
right? And like they have these aspects of like devotion in them, but they're also sort of like drawing on power from another worldly
Yeah.
being. And that's just like it's almost like a custom class,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like you can kind of make just about any custom class that you want to by pulling from different subclasses. So maybe I'm just not creative enough, but I feel like there's so much. Not only is there so much sort of variety and versatility within the existing classes and subclasses, um, but flavor is free,
Flavor is free.
and so it's like I just I don't know that I feel like there's like this gaping hole of like an archetype that you couldn't easily reproduce with a little creativity in on the multi-classing front. I don't know.
Makes perfect
Maybe
sense.
I'm wrong. What do you think of any that you'd like to
I
see?
mean, I do homebrew stuff, so like I make
Yeah,
stuff that I want. So I
sure.
obviously the College of Dragons Bard just went up
Yeah.
for Dragon Week a week ago. When's this going up? If anyone watches this, my next subclass is a touch range wizard.
Nice.
Because
That
I
I did a my first like kind of concept first build
mm,
was the sorcerer with the magic touch,
yeah.
where I said, okay, like I'm limiting myself to only being able to do damage with touch spells,
Yeah.
and like what could we do if that were the case? So yeah, that's a cool kind of fun concept.
Well, I wanted to make a spell monk, but because I play online, we use D&D Beyond, and
Hmm.
you can't give monks spell slots
Hmm.
because there's no subclass that gives them spell slots,
Right,
which
right,
means
right.
that there's no functionality for that whatsoever in D&D Beyond at the
Yeah.
moment, which is
You've
frustrating.
got to you've got to use the dungeon dudes. They've got the arcane hand monk, but it's not on D&D Beyond, I don't believe
If it
yet.
was, I'd have bought it.
And I don't have a lot of insider information, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that available eventually, especially with as good as D&D Beyond has gotten
Mm,
lately at like trying to incorporate more
yeah, for
third
sure.
party creators. So and the Dungeon Dudes are already up there with
Yeah.
like their Drakkenheim adventures,
Yep.
right? They just don't have Sebastian Crow's book yet, which has like all their new kind of class and subclass options.
I am eagerly awaiting the chance to pick up more third party content is for me like the lifeblood of D&D. I
Mm,
adore what people do with
yeah.
the rules and the weird spells and everything else.
I really enjoy incorporating stuff into like our own table.
Mm.
We use a lot of like Gryffindor saddlebag
Yes.
and mostly like other hit point press things, because my DM's just a fan. But I think sometimes the challenge obviously is balance. I mean,
Yes.
I see stuff sometimes that come out from third party creators, and even like that are like well known and established. That's like, oh, that that's broken.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna have to tweak that if we try and bring that on, at our table.
Mhm.
Um, and and to that point, maybe that's maybe one thing that's keeping the Arcane Hand Monk from being available on D&D Beyond right now, because I know that, like, from talking with Monty and Kelly,
Mhm.
um, I did a build for the Arcane Hand Monk. I flew out to Toronto actually and recorded it with them in their studio, and it was really cool, when I presented it.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Monty said at the time, like in that interview, look, we kind of built this subclass to be a little bit like overtuned
Mhm.
because the monk is so lacking
Yes.
otherwise, right? The 2014 monk was sort of famously not very
Yeah.
good mechanically, right? And so they're like, we're trying to make up for that by giving them a lot of sort of extra juice.
Yeah.
And so in the end, the character was fairly balanced. Um, but if you tried to play that subclass in the
Yeah.
2024 rules where the monk got a lot of love, it's like, oh, now this is too powerful. And so, I don't know. I haven't asked, but I don't know if they're kind of going, okay, do we try to like come up with a 2024 version of this? Do we have some sort of like sidebar that says, if you're playing this with
Yeah.
2024 rules, then, here's some balance changes you could make or something like that. I don't know.
It's tough because I don't
Um,
think a lot of the classes changed quite. I think fighter got a lot better. I think marshals in general got
yeah,
a lot better, right? I'm
yeah,
pretty sure
for
you
sure.
agree with this. It's still not
Yeah.
enough to really close the gap.
Yeah, the gap got narrower.
Yeah, which is good.
Um, but I was talking about this. It was yesterday actually, because I do a live Q&A once a month, right, for channel members and patrons. And somebody asked a question about this, and so I was going on about it. Like, the problem, it seems to me, with the biggest problem, maybe the number one problem, I think, with the sort of power disparity between marshals and casters
Mm.
as it exists, is that WotC seems really afraid, for some reason, for whatever reason, to really let martial damage scale,
Mm.
like into the mid and late game.
Yeah.
They tend to get a lot of nice buffs and benefits like early on, as most classes, right?
Hmm.
And then some of them, depending on the class, get like a really nice level 11 boost. And then after that, it just sort of becomes like, oh, this thing that was letting you do 1d6 of damage
Mm.
once a turn is now a
Yeah.
1d8. And it's
Once a
like,
turn. Yeah.
okay, like, so I got one more damage per round
Yeah.
now. Like, and it needs to, they need to really, like, what I would like to see is for them to kind of go, okay, like, what is the thing that would really let this fighter after level 11 or whatever do like more damage?
Mm.
Would it be to continue taking fighter levels, or would it be to pick up the Spirit Shroud spell
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Granted, that's a 5 level investment, so that's not small, but just as an example.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if they could get that spell and suddenly they're adding 1d8 to all of their attacks, and
Yeah.
they're making probably 4 attacks per turn more with action surge, you know what I mean? If they've got a weaponized bonus action
Yeah.
anyways. Well, that's like an extra 4d8 of damage, right? By the time they get to level 16, for
Yeah.
example. Um, are we doing something to give them 4d8 of damage per round? Like,
Yeah.
if they just were to stay fighter? And if not, like, maybe we need to.
Yeah.
and they don't. They're too afraid of like of unbalancing the game, and I appreciate that, but at the same time, it's almost like the problem is, casters like get so much more from spells than
Yeah.
just damage, right? I mean, the most powerful spells are the control
Yeah.
ones, and the and now you get all this utility and support and buffing and debuffing and all these other kinds of things. And so, if you're not giving like spell level of like versatility
Yeah.
and utility and power to a marshal, then it's so hard from at least from an optimizer min maxer perspective, right? To not make everything a gish,
Yeah.
or at least if you're looking for damage. And to be fair, like I love that. I love gishes, spell swords. They're my favorite,
Yeah.
and so like I don't want them to be nerfed. But there's the other part of me that goes, yeah, like take off those gloves. Like don't make me as a barbarian wait for 9 levels or however many it is to get my rage damage bonus to go from 2 to 3.
The rage damage
It's like
bonus is nuts. It's
it's like that's
preposterous.
so nothing,
Yeah.
And even though like they gave monks a little more love with the martial arts die, for example, and it's like now it starts at a D6 and
Mm.
it goes to a D8 and then a D10. It's like that's great, but like you got to understand that like that's one more damage per hit on
Yeah.
average. I know you feel like you're really buffing them, but like if I just took some spell that gave me a little bump, I'm gonna like way outpace that. Not to mention all of the other benefits that I'd get from having spells,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
so, and maybe it's not damage. Maybe the answer isn't damage. Maybe you make them way more, durable or way more whatever, have like really great, fantastic utility and or
Mm.
debuffing or support features otherwise. And I can see them doing some of that. And to your point earlier, right? Like they did Marshall's got a lot of love
Yeah.
in 2024, no question, to help narrow that gap, but there's still a gap.
Yeah.
And until they I think until they start going, okay, like, how would this character benefit if they were to multi-class and grab some spells and can we give them something that's comparable in power, whether damage or something else,
Mm.
right? Um, to encourage them to stay in this class, then multi-classing will almost always, I feel like, be the better choice from like a mechanics power
Yeah.
perspective. There are exceptions, obviously, and it kind of depends on what you're building for, etc. But yeah, anyways.
It's tough. I think it's why a lot of DMs end up homebrewing weapons and stuff for the marshals, because that's
Yeah.
the only way to get them to scale properly.
Yeah, and to be fair, like that's not nothing, right? And
Yeah.
I think that people at WotC probably, well, I think there's two things going on. One, they're probably thinking, hey, they're making weapon attacks and they could get a flame tongue,
Yeah.
greatsword and add 2d6 damage to every
Yeah.
single one of their swings, and that's really good, and that's true, it is. Um, Also, you could be a swords bard or a blade singer
Yeah.
or a hexblade or just any warlock with Pact of the Blade, you know
Yep.
what I mean? And get lots of attacks too, and get a flame tongue
As
halberd or
well
whatever
on top of
too,
that. Yeah.
and have spells that you're, really increasing your
Yeah.
damage with. So I think there is an assumption at WotC that's like, well, these marshals are going to get like these magic weapons that are going to kind of help them
Mm.
close that gap. And the other thing that I think is happening is I forgot what I was going to say. So maybe that was the only thing. There are other things going on too, but I can't think of anything interesting to say about what they might be because I forgot.
I respect it. It was a good thing. It was a good one thing if it was just the one
It was.
thing. So
It was the most important thing, really.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, when it comes to me, I'll be sure and let you know.
Yeah. Do you wish you could do more builds around third party stuff on the channel?
Yes and no. Um, so yeah, the main reason I don't, as I'm sure that you know or can guess, is that like, this is what I do for a living, and when I do third party stuff,
Mm.
it tends to underperform, just because not everybody can play
Yeah.
with MCDMs. Oh gosh,
The Ill Rigger.
Illrigger. right?
Super cool class.
Yeah, yeah. And
Super
and
cool.
I did an interview video
Mm,
with the designers of it from MCDM,
yeah.
and we talked all about it and got into the nitty-gritty of like what the different subclasses can do, and oh man, this is so cool. And I kind of said in that video, I'm like, hey, like if you guys want to see me do an Illrigger build, like I'm happy to do it.
Mm,
But like it's gonna kind of depend on how this video
yeah.
performs, right? And of course, it was like my most least viewed video
Yeah.
of, for several months running. And so I haven't, and I still get requests from people to do it. I've done occasional ones, but they almost always, with one exception, underperform. Oh gosh, what's the Matt Mercer?
Draw
The
steel?
What's that?
Draw steel? No, that's his game
No,
system.
no, no, no. Well, Draw Steel is MCDM.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Critical Role.
Mm, the other Matt.
Um,
Sorry, there's too many Matts.
yeah, there are.
Taldore?
Uh,
Bloodhunter.
did I? Yes, thank you, Blood Hunter. I've done a couple Blood Hunter builds,
We got there.
and neither of them have done well, really, like
Mm,
relatively, right? They've underperformed. The one exception to that was the Arcane Hand Monk that I did with Kelly and Monty, and I don't know if that's because I put Kelly and Monty on the thumbnail
yeah.
and they're just so good looking that people couldn't help but click on it. Or what it was. That one performed really well. But any other third party stuff that I've ever done has underperformed. Uh, so yes, I would enjoy doing more third party builds because, it's fun, it's different, it's interesting. Um, I also, but if they performed better,
Mm,
I would do them. At the same time, like it is a lot more work
yes.
to, because I'm at the point now where I've got a pretty good working knowledge of, the different classes and
Everything.
subclasses and spells and
Yeah.
feats, right? Not to say that I don't make mistakes because I do pretty much every video. But it's just a lot easier for me to go, okay, like here's my concept, and I can just kind of go, I think I know like what to do here. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm going to open up a bunch of tabs and I'm going to weigh my options, and sometimes I'm going to have to crunch numbers to compare if I did it this way versus that way.
Mm,
But like, it's fairly easy for me to kind of figure it out and lay it all out. When there's a third party subclass or class, it's like I kind of have to. There's a lot more research that has to
yeah.
go into the thing before I can even start to build it.
Makes
And
sense.
so it would definitely it does, I should say, definitely increase my workload
Mhm.
anytime I do, third party stuff. And that's not to say that I begrudge that time. I still enjoy it and it's fun. At the same time, you know, I have a life
Yeah.
and a lot of demands on the time from family and other things. And so yeah, it can kind of get like, oh, okay, I'm like this is gonna have to eat into my family time
Yeah.
now, like if I'm going to do a third party build, and I'm happy to do it like once in a while, but um yeah, it's not something that I feel like I have time to do regularly.
Yeah.
So
This makes sense. One more like behind the curtain question because I'm curious. How do your artificer builds compared to the other builds? Do they underperform or are they hitting the same?
it depends on what you're building for.
Okay.
um so in my opinion, for my money, like the armor tank,
Hmm.
the guardian model of the armor artificer, I should say, is the best tank in D&D.
Yeah.
At least when it comes to like wanting to make sure that you have some sort of taunt like
Yeah.
ability, right? Where you're hitting an enemy and thereby imposing disadvantage on any attacks that they make against anyone other than you, which is kind of what I consider, the taunt like abilities in
Yeah.
D&D. I mean, they can get an AC that's just ridiculously high, and taunt with every swing of their
Yeah.
fists, and even make intelligence-based attacks, and have some cool spells and like all that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, they tend to do very well. If I'm doing like damage builds,
Mm.
you know what? Let's take a look. Let's look at the spreadsheets
We've hit the
because
spreadsheets.
your hunch is probably right that they probably underperform generally. So if I now I haven't done a lot of artificer builds with the 2024 rules because there's no official
They don't
artificer
technically
in
exist yet.
2024, right?
Yeah.
I did do one Unearthed Arcana, well, two now, I guess, builds using artificers. One was the tank, one was the damage dealer, the new dreadnought,
Hmm.
and they did okay. I think they were. Let's see, where's the dreadnought? Oh, they're near the bottom.
Oh, okay.
They're barely keeping. They're barely staying ahead of what I would consider baseline or like the I can do this all day
Yeah.
build. As far as like average damage over their career. So that's not a good sign. If we look at like the old 2014 stuff, let's see, of all of my builds, and I have a very overly simplified system for ranking like damage builds.
Yeah.
It's not a very good one. It's not weighted like it probably should be, and it just kind of takes an average of every enemy AC from 10 to 25, and then how much damage are we doing at level 6, 9, 13, and 17, and
Yeah.
then just averages that all into one big number, right? And so it's, again, it's overly simplified, but I'm looking now, and okay, there are no artificer builds in tier 1. Um, in tier 2, and I mean, gosh, I have 170 builds, and some of these are years old. So I look at them and go, "Do I remember what that was? Did
Was
that
that
have artificer
me?
levels? I don't think so." Yeah, exactly. But I'm pretty sure none of these had artificer builds, or sorry, artificer levels.
Mm.
Um, how about tier 3? Swashbuckler, infiltrator. There's your highest, your hardest hitting uh mostly artificer, I should
Yeah.
say, character build was the infiltrator, and it was near the top of tier 3, and I have 5 tiers, so
Better than
slightly
average.
better than average.
Yeah.
Yeah, slightly better than average. um and so yeah, I think the answer to your question is probably that they don't really keep up quite as well.
They're trying.
Um, Now, again, there's more to the character's power than
Yes.
just numbers and just damage, right? Obviously, in artificers, and a lot of people will argue and do, well, artificers are great because they bring a lot of utility. They can, they've got a pretty decent spell list,
Hmm.
especially depending on the subclass. They can support, they can be really durable, they can, do all these other things. They've got some decent control options. Um, I'm looking now. I want to look at Nova builds because I used to do a lot more Nova builds than I do these days because Nova has been so heavily nerfed, I think, in
Hmm.
2024. But I'm willing to bet that there aren't any like hard-hitting Nova damage artificers either. None in tier 1 that I can see. Um, no, no. They're all like casters and
Yeah.
paladins and, doing 5,000 smites a turn because they used to be able to do that. I mean, nothing in tier 3 even, I don't think. Tier 4 was my last Nova. Did I even ever build an Artificer Nova damage dealer? Bullets, Magic Sorcerer, Thunderball. That was mostly an armorer, if I
Hmm.
remember. So near the bottom of the lowest tier.
Ah, not so good
It's
for the
the
Nova.
one, yeah, the one Artificer Nova damage dealer. So yeah, not the kings or queens of damage necessarily, but they do bring
They're
a
fun.
lot, and they're a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
How much would going to level 20 change your build
Hmm.
method?
You know, I don't think it would change it very much. Because from day one, like one of my like overarching goals for my builds was I want these characters to be good
Hmm.
like throughout their career.
Yeah.
And because I was spending a lot of time before I even started the channel, I was spending a lot of time on like subreddits like 3D6
Hmm.
uh, and others. And people are just like, check out my build. Like at level 20, it does 5 zillion damage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's awesome, but like it sucks at level 5.
Yeah.
And most people stop playing at like level 10. So
Yeah.
who cares? You know what I mean? Like how do you get there and what does it look like as you go? And so I was just like, nobody's doing this. Like nobody's like everybody's just throwing out these like hypothetical character builds that look amazing at level 20, but like
Would not
they don't really
survive to
come
level 20,
online.
right?
Yeah, like they don't come online until like level 14,
Yeah.
maybe when like all of these things that you're trying to do come together. And I'm like, and that's like not a very viable build for like most people outside of one shots, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I was like, I want to not only build a character that's really powerful at high level, but more importantly, like I want to build one that's really good, like near the end of tier one
Hmm.
and into tier two, and what does it look like in tier three play and tier four play? Um, and then also like how do we get there? And like what's the not just what's the best end build, but like what's the best path to take as we go,
Yeah.
right? Like at what point do I multiclass into whatever in order to get that spell? Would I be better off delaying that so I could get extra attack first or whatever? Like
Hmm.
and like let's crunch the numbers and find out. So I've kind of always done that. And if I were to, for example, do like one final damage report, because I
Mm.
always do a damage report at level 6, 9, 13, and 17. If I then also did a level 20 damage
Mm.
report, I have a hard time imagining that I would go, well, gosh, at level 20, this character would be so much better if I would have done X or Y
Yeah.
or Z. Um, Even though it would be way worse at level 6, 9, 13, and
Yeah.
17. You know what I mean? Um, so I think if anything, it would probably just change them in that I would more regularly talk about what epic boon should you take,
Yeah.
when that becomes available. And, it would just add a little length to the build. And the reason that I don't do that, and I get a lot of requests for people like, why don't you go to 20
Mm.
or um, what would you recommend doing, 17 through 20, etc. Is I just kind of am like, look, I've actually not ever played this character in game.
Yeah.
Like this is all just like in a lab, right? And if you're gonna play this character, like by the time you get to level 17,
Yeah.
you're gonna know a lot better than I do what's gonna be best for them at
Yeah.
level 18 and 19 and 20, right? And sure, there are people who just want a one-shot character and they're like, I'm doing a level 20 one-shot, like
Yeah.
what should I do? I get that. At the same time, like I found that my videos perform a lot better if I can keep it under an hour.
Right.
They just tend to get clicked on more. And so I'm just like, look, level 17 is sort of that's the last time you get a proficiency bonus
Mm.
bump. If you're a full caster, you're going to get level 9 spells. Like this is sort of the last like beginning of like your final power surge,
Yeah.
as it were. And so like let's just take it to there and and you could probably figure out the rest, right? So yeah, I don't know that it would change them all that much. I think it would just add more time to my videos. And frankly, a lot of the things that I said would be the same every time.
Yeah.
Like, what epic boon should you take? Well, you're making weapon attacks. There's two. So it's this one or this one, right? Like again, like if I'm building for the spreadsheet, which I
Mm.
tend to do, right? There's a lot of awesome epic boons.
Yeah.
Most of them are they're powerful, but they are like utility or
Yeah.
control or survivability focused, right? And so many of my builds are like damage dealers making weapon attacks.
Yeah.
If they're not making weapon attacks, they might be casting spells, in which case, again, your options are fairly limited.
Yeah.
If your primary goal is to build for the spreadsheet, right? Which I always do. So it just feels like it wouldn't actually be that interesting.
Mm.
Like I would kind of just be saying the same things or similar things all the time. So I don't know.
That's fair. I just wonder if it affects multi-classing in a way, because there are classes like the monk and the barbarian get a notable boost at 20 thanks to the
Yeah.
ASI improvements, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm
and
just
and
curious to
and
see.
again, I think, if I were contemplating like, okay, I'm going to play a character and my DM has told me that like we're going to level 20
Yeah.
and that's exciting and it's going to take us 2 years to get
Yeah.
there, at my table it would, right? Um So, like level 20, that capstone is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm playing a monk and I want a +4 to my dexterity and a +4 to my wisdom.
Yeah.
Is it worth sacrificing like potential mechanical
Yeah.
advantage from levels? I mean, I'm just making something up here, but right, like maybe if I were to multi-class, I would be a lot stronger from levels 6 through 19,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But at level 20, I'd probably be better if I would have just gone straight monk.
Yeah.
And this isn't Baldur's Gate. I can't respec. So unless my DM allows that, right?
And they should.
So like I either I I love that idea. I either need to like, be committed to being slightly disappointed when I hit level 20,
Yeah.
but like enjoying a much stronger like,
Yeah.
experience through most of the game. Yeah, so again, like if you're talking, hey, I'm doing a level 21 shot, how should I build this
Yeah.
character? Yeah, I might go, yeah, maybe I would do it differently. But like I just don't build for that, right?
No,
I
of
I,
course.
I think like what's the whole lifespan of the character and what's kind of sort of the thing that's going to make them the most optimal at every stage, right? Um, so
I want to talk about your Dragon Week build because it's the most
hmm.
unhinged collection of multi-classes I've ever seen in my life, and I have nothing but respect for it.
Well, you haven't watched all my videos.
I've watched a lot of them.
there's there's worse ones, I promise.
Is it
Hmm.
so? This goes back to what you're saying about the idea of custom classes and how
Yeah.
uh, it depends how your group are seeing the class thing.
Yeah.
Is it tough to go and make a build where you've got like such a strange level progression throughout the how do you even start approaching that?
Yeah. I don't find it difficult. I do feel myself compelled to like offer like ideas
Yeah.
on how you might pitch this to a DM who is looking for some justification
Yeah.
on why at level 3 you're a what was that? Sorcerer, warlock, ranger,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I think there's kind of two approaches, right? One, like I've said, hey, this is a custom class. This is not a sorcerer, warlock,
Yeah.
ranger. It is a giant hunter
Yeah.
and or a draconic giant hunter. That's what it is, and it just needs some of each of these
Yeah.
classes to sort of make it into this custom class that I have envisioned, right? Um, that's one approach. Another, but some DMs might not go for that, and they might say, no, like not good enough. In which case, yeah, I usually will, not always, especially if it's just like a fighter rogue multi-class. Most
Yeah.
people can kind of go, yeah, Um, but yeah, like I'll often kind of go, okay, like how would I like make this character's backstory in order for this to work, right? Okay, so yeah, like you are descended from dragons, but one of those dragons just happens to be, like a super powerful dragon,
Mm.
like a Bahamut or a Tiamat or something, or one of their high-ranking minions,
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, and that's your patron. But you've been tasked by them to like go on this quest against dragon kind. So maybe you're out to kill giants or illithids or
Hmm.
whatever, and so like that's your ranger levels, something like that, right? Where it's like you just got to get creative. And you can come up with it. As far
Yeah.
as like when I'm putting the build together, is it difficult mechanically? And like, how do I decide? I don't know if that's what you're asking. Like, how
Yeah.
do I decide? Like, when do you take a level of ranger
Yeah.
versus continuing on with sorcerer or whatever? Yeah, often like it usually comes down to the numbers for me. So I'll go, okay, this build I want to build this cleaver, right? And like that's doing damage to multiple enemies standing next to each other
Yeah.
in a perfect scenario. Okay, what are the features that will let me do damage to multiple enemies that are standing next to each other? Okay, well you've got the cleave, uh, what's the word? Weapon mastery.
Yeah.
You've got hunters have a great, horde breaker
Yeah.
ability. Of course, there's spells, the Dragon's Breath spell, the Dragonborn's breath weapon attack, etc. And so, the Green Flame Blade cantrip. Like I kind of am compiling all of these things in my head,
Right.
right? And going, okay, here's all the things that like would be good for this concept.
Hmm.
Now, like which ones are best?
Yeah.
Which ones, if I'm building for damage, which ones do the most damage? Well, like this is better than this and that's
Hmm.
better than that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And go, okay, so like this is my priority and then this or whatever.
Hmm.
If like how bad do I need extra attack? Well, if I'm casting Green Flame Blade, not as badly as I otherwise would,
Yeah.
things like that. And then I just kind of like I'll oftentimes with that build especially actually that the math on that one was a nightmare. Like I was constantly like throwing different orders of
Hmm.
the build together and then having to crunch numbers and compare them to each other,
Right.
right? So it's like, well, okay, if I went Sorcerer 5, Warlock 1, at level 6, my first damage report, what do the numbers look like?
Yeah.
How important is it for me to get that weapon mastery of cleave? How important is it to get to Ranger 3 so that I can get Horde Breaker? Is that going to be better than upcasting Dragon's Breath
Yeah.
would be, or getting, da, 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 da. And so like, yeah, I'll go through a process, and it's not to say that I don't sometimes miss a potential combination that would be even better,
Mm.
right? But yeah, I almost always am doing like multiple combinations. Like at level 6,
Hmm.
I'll start there, right? Okay, what's the best that I could do at level 6? And usually that's the path that I'll pick.
Okay.
Because again, I want them to be as strong as possible, as early as
Yeah.
possible, right? And then go, okay, from here, what's going to be the best by level 9? And from there, what's going to be the best by level 13? Every once in a while, I might find a combo where it's like, okay, this path
Hmm.
is like way, way, way better at 9 than this other path. That path was slightly better at 6, but just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I'll go slightly suboptimal to 6,
Mm.
knowing that it'll pay
Yeah.
dividends later in the build or whatever, right? Um, but yeah, most often I'm going, okay, like what is the strongest thing I can do here for this concept by level 6, and then go from there. Okay, from this point, what's gonna give me the most bang for my buck
Yeah.
by level 9, and then by level 13, by level 17. Um, yeah.
That's just I don't know. It's impressive. As I used to be an
Oh,
accountant, and I think
thanks.
the level of spreadsheet that must go into this is.
It's a lot. Do you want to see? Can I share my screen? Would you capture it if I shared my screen?
I don't think so because of the setup I've got.
Okay. I'm looking, so just for example, I can just describe this as best I can. So I make I present to the viewers a spreadsheet for each of my builds, right? Where I'll have like, okay, here are all of the things that are doing damage,
Hmm.
right? And this is their value at level 6, at 9, at 13, at 17. And then I have below that like, okay, here's the average damage that we would do
Yeah.
for enemy ACs 10 through 25, and then by level again. So at level 6 against a 10 AC, it's 66. Against a 25, it's 37 for
Hmm.
this draconic cleaver that we're talking about. Below that, and what I don't show people is, I mean, this is absurd. It's how many rows, how many columns deep am I here? I'm going all the way up to AI, so that's 30 some
Yeah.
columns, and let's see, from rows 40 to 109 is just numbers
Good
of me kind
lord.
of going, okay, like what about this combo? What about this combo? What about this combo? Okay, like this is the winner. And then doing that for level 9 and 17, or 13 and 17 too. So yeah, it's a lot. To be fair, this is more than I usually end up with. Most of the time it's like, I might have, I don't know what. I'm just looking at Sir Lancelot, which
Yeah,
was the build from a couple of weeks prior, and that's got 15 rows and call it 20 columns
a lot more reasonable.
of just number crunching. Yeah. So, anyways.
Colby works for you, dear viewers.
I try and earn those pennies that I get from the views for sure.
You're neck deep in spreadsheet columns and formulas all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, are you playing in a campaign at the moment?
No,
Oh,
sadly, and it's almost embarrassing to admit, honestly, because as someone who kind of like pretends to be this like grandmaster of knowledge about Dungeons and Dragons, and who has to sometimes fend off
yeah,
accusations of ruining the game and only caring about the numbers and probably being a lousy role player,
yeah.
to not be active in a campaign at the moment is like makes me feel like if they knew that, they'd be like, I knew it. um so I'm not. We had one going with a group of my friends, and it just kind of fell apart due to
Scheduling.
scheduling,
Yeah,
and mostly kid-related
yep.
challenges. And so, yes, I am between campaigns at the moment. My friend and I just were talking yesterday, and we were both just like, let's just like do a one shot. Let's just get together and do a one shot. I'm like, I'll put something together, and let's just get together and just because like it's been a long time since we've played. I do still play a fair bit because I feel like I get lots of invitations
Yeah.
from like other content creators, right? To do a one shot with them,
Hmm.
whether that's in D&D or in like another system.
Yeah.
So for example, for those who know Alan, who's putting together
DC
DC 20.
20. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic system, by the way. I'm a huge fan. Um, we just recorded a video where we were creating characters for an upcoming one shot, and then in a week or two, we're going to be getting together and playing.
Very cool.
I did the Gauntlet from CMCC Builds a little while ago. So yeah, like I play a fair bit, just but it's mostly like invitations
Yeah.
to join, other people's like one shot type things. One day, I hope to. I do have a standing invite from Chris Triant Monk's
Mm.
group. One of his friends reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, like, we're starting up a new campaign. Like, if you want to join us." And you know what, I would love to. And they're, I believe, on East Coast time, 2 hours ahead. And so
Right.
that becomes a thing where it's like I can really only play like later,
Yeah.
and that's probably not going to work for you guys. And I'm also the type where I really don't like playing online. I don't
Ah.
like I'll do it
Yeah.
if there's no other option, but I vastly prefer playing in person. I just find it so much easier to kind of create chemistry
Mm.
and I don't know, get into the story and I love minis. I love minis and maps like way better than like digital assets. So that's another thing where I'm just kind of like, I don't. That's just not as fun for me. I hate to say it. So maybe I need to just move to Canada.
Just
Um,
invade
so I can so I can
Monty and
so I can
yeah.
join that game. Yeah, or play with and Monty and Kelly and I we fantasize about, doing like a I hate to say this because it sounds so incredibly pretentious, but kind of an all-stars um of
Actual
D&D
play. Yeah. Yeah.
YouTubers,
Yeah.
like actual play, yeah. And so get me and them and like whatever, like Antonio and Ginny or Will or like whoever, other people, and just and do like a where we all like here's the idea that we all fly into Toronto
Mm.
and just stay there for a week, and we play every day or maybe even twice a day,
Yeah.
and we record, 8 sessions or whatever
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like, and call that like season one of sort of a longer kind
Hmm.
of campaign that's happening, and release those,
Yeah.
one a month or one every other week or something like that, kind of trickle them out, and then a few months later fly back to
Do it again.
Toronto and
Yeah.
bang out another 8 episodes, maybe with the same people, maybe it's in the same world, but it's in a different part of the world.
Hmm.
So maybe we mix up the cast a little bit and we bring different characters. I don't know. This is us just kind of fantasizing and daydreaming, but um, yeah, like that would be my favorite thing ever, and hopefully we'll be able to make it work one day. But again, everybody gets so busy, and the Dungeon Dudes, especially, with all of their Drakkenheim
Yeah.
stuff, they're just that's their baby, and where they're putting a lot of their love. Not to mention, putting out 2 videos a
Yep.
week, for their YouTube channel. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to make the schedules work. But if I had a magic wand and could make it happen, that's where I'd be playing my D&D right now for sure.
If you were to be in a campaign, what is the next character you're playing?
See, the problem is that changes every week. Like every time I put out a new build, I'm like, this
This
is
is
my
the
next
build.
character. And then the next week it's like, this is my next character. Because I spend 20 to 25 hours or more sometimes bringing these things to
Yeah.
life. You know what I mean? So by the time I'm done, I'm like so invested, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this would be so cool. Um, I think it would probably be, if you forced me to choose, it would probably be a paladin
Hmm.
of some kind. I don't know if it would be a little more on the tanky side or a little more on the I'm gonna try and kill everything side,
Yeah.
or somewhere in between. But I think it would probably be. So I love the changes to devotion and vengeance,
Hmm.
paladins especially. I have a feeling that I'd probably want to do something akin to my it was the Night of Whispers, I believe it was, a semi-recent build.
Yeah.
That was devotion pally with a splash in warlock for Pact of the Blade,
Hmm.
and other things. I can't remember what else. I went Whispers Bard on that. Um, that would be a lot of fun, and I really like what they've done with Devotion Pally. So that would be high up on the list for sure. Um, Beyond that, I love the World Tree Barbarian.
Mm.
And I actually played in a one shot what was it? It was the World Tree Barb build that I did, that was like, all about, pulling enemies into them and
Yeah.
like sticking them in place and stuff like that. And it was just a lot of fun in the one shot.
Yeah.
And I think, you know what? It was a cleaver. That's right. It was the cleaver. They were mostly World Tree
Mm.
Barbarian, but so they weren't like a tank necessarily, but they were pretty good at like helping keep their
Yeah.
allies safe, and they could do a lot of damage, especially to multiple enemies if they could get them to stand next to each other, which is easier to do as a cleaver because you can
You
yank
can.
them.
You. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think those two would maybe be the front runners for
Hmm.
me right now, but I don't know. Again, that
Give it a
that
week.
changes. It changes all the time. The Eldritch Knight, straight class Eldritch Knight, um, sword and board.
Yep.
Although it was not technically a sword, it was a shillelagh staff. But I would have flavored it like a wooden sword.
Oh, like yeah, a trading sword.
Um,
That'd be very cool.
yeah, that was a lot of fun, and both really hard hitting and super tanky. So I don't know. I'm just looking at all of them here, going, "Oh no, never mind. I want to play this one instead." Shadow Monk. Yeah, I'd do a Shadow Monk for sure.
You feel like it feels
Um,
like you're under a Grecian curse to like always have builds to in your head and never
yeah,
be able to play them.
and that's one thing that I love about Baldur's Gate 3, to circle back,
Yeah.
right? Is like it gives you the kind of that sandbox ability to sort
Yeah.
of try out lots of different things. And also things like the gauntlet, CMC's gauntlet
Hmm.
is pretty cool for trying out, new builds. And even like solo play stuff. So I get a regular sponsor, Obvious Mimic, on my
Yes. Yeah.
channel, and they specialize in like solo D&D campaigns. And they're fun to use to kind of test out, but they're all pretty low level.
Yeah.
So you don't really get into kind of the tier 3 and beyond
Yeah.
play with those and really kind of flesh out a concept as much, but they're still great.
One more question
Yeah.
relating to the tiers. Do you prefer low or high tier play?
I don't prefer low tier play.
Okay.
I think I prefer mid tier play.
Okay.
So I guess it depends on what you mean by high tier. Um, I, I, well, frankly, I have very little experience playing past level 15,
Hmm.
right? Only one campaign, 5e campaign that I've ever played in has gone beyond level, I want to say 13.
Okay.
Um, I've done a handful of one shots at higher level, but that's tough. It's tough, as fun as it is to bring this like superhero level
Yeah.
character into a one shot. Like, it's overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like I haven't been playing this character for 2 years. Like, this is the
Yeah.
first time I've like tried this out, and like I have so many things to like try and keep track
Yeah.
of and remember to do, and all these spells and all these options. It's like I feel like anytime I play a level 20 or a level 15, character in a one shot, I'm constantly just like stuck in this decision paralysis place where I'm like, I can't remember what I'm supposed to do here. um, so yeah, I guess I would say my preference is to play a character from one until
Yeah.
high level. Um, and so you can really enjoy kind of the growth along the way. But yeah, like I like to like pre level 5, even level 6, depending on if you're playing a blade singer or not. It feels a lot less like, I just like I'm waiting to get good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A little bit. So yeah, tier 1 is not my favorite. Anything beyond that, I guess I would say, and especially if I've had time to kind of ramp up
Yeah.
into it. But
Really
yeah,
enjoy it.
we've done a lot of campaigns with my friends that are sort of shorter
Hmm.
campaigns, maybe just like 6-month arcs kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, and usually when we do those, we're kind of starting at like 6, 7, 8
Yeah.
and playing until 11, 12. That feels to me like a little bit of a sweet spot where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, my character like is pretty powerful. They
Yeah.
can do lots of cool stuff, but they're not like so complicated and so overpowered that it's difficult to balance combat
Yeah.
encounters, right? So yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Is there anything you want to plug? Obviously, we will. Obviously, a huge shout out to Colby's channel members, who are
Yes.
the real multi-classes or something. I don't do segues as well
Yeah.
as you do.
If you saw my last video, my segues are only getting worse as time goes on. But yes, my channel members are not getting worse. They're only getting better.
See,
They're
what a
amazing and
pro.
and make it possible. All you have to do for a segue is just take the last thing that you said and then say it about your members, or say they're not like the last thing that I said. Instead, they're amazing.
Uh,
But yeah, no, they're great, including you. So thank you for
oh,
for your support.
thank you for putting up with me in
Um,
the server, occasionally throwing random names at you.
no, they're good ones. One of these days you'll win the
I had one a while ago.
name my bill. Oh, that's right, you did. That's right. I remember that, and I put it up there. I
Yeah,
don't remember what it was now.
I
What
can't
was it?
remember. I don't know. It was
You
years
know,
ago. It wasn't. It was like a couple of months
years
ago.
ago.
But time, man.
Yeah, I'm the worst at naming things. I'm always like, what should I call this one? The giant barbarian thrower? And then somebody's like, no, it's Flamin' Hot Yeetos. I'm like, oh yeah, that's
Obviously, it's that. You have some of the world's most inventive people in that server
They're
with a
great.
real
They're
talent
great.
for just naming builds. It's very
Yes.
impressive.
Yeah. The best one I think that we've ever had was the Full Metal Abjurist,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because it was an Abjurer uh, Guardian
Yeah.
Armorer, and it just is like that is so perfect.
He put it in and
Never in a
everyone else
million
just
years.
stopped. And it was just like, there's no
Yeah, I
point.
never in a million years would have come up with that. But yeah, they're always Sir Lancelot. Like I'm just looking at all of these. There's like so many good ones. And yeah, and the way that I label them in my spreadsheet is like Shadow Monk or whatever, just like something boring, you know. So yeah. No, yeah, thanks to anyone and everyone who watches the channel and likes and subscribes and comments, and especially the members. They're just, yeah, make it possible to do what I do. So
Thank you so much for finding time again. I know you're a busy man.
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Wave at the camera and then I'll stop recording. That's generally how this works. So yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.